Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into the Salem Witch Trials.
Ooh.
We've got a bunch of YouTube videos.
Oh, cool.
And we're going to go beyond just the, basic what happened.
Yeah.
And really trying to get into the nitty-gritty of what was going on back then.
I love it.
So to start, let's go
Okay.
back to 1692 Salem.
Okay.
What was life like back then?
Well, you got to imagine a small community
Okay.
in Massachusetts where everybody believes in the devil
Right.
and the devil's out to get them.
So they were really afraid of the devil back then.
Oh, yeah. They really believed that Satan was constantly trying to undermine them and their faith.
So it wasn't just a general fear of evil. It was
Right.
very specifically the devil.
Uh-huh. And they had some reasons to be afraid.
Oh, yeah.
They were dealing with conflicts with Native Americans.
Right.
Harsh winters.
Not a fun time.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And resources were really scarce.
Okay, so life was already pretty difficult.
Yeah. And that just made them more vulnerable,
So this idea that the devil was out to get them.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's they were already on edge. And then
Yeah.
it wasn't just this abstract fear, though.
Okay.
There were some serious tensions within the community itself.
Interesting.
So we think of Salem and we often think of the port.
Right, Salem town.
Yeah. But this was Salem Village,
Okay.
which was smaller and poorer
Okay.
and a lot more rural.
Ah, so there was already some division within Salem itself.
Yeah. And the people in Salem Village, they felt overlooked,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and marginalized.
Okay.
And that led to resentment
Sure.
and suspicion.
So you've got this community that's struggling.
Right.
They don't have a lot of resources. They're afraid of the devil. And then on top of that, they don't like each other that much.
And then you add Reverend Samuel Parris into the mix.
This guy sounds like trouble.
He was a very controversial figure,
Okay.
to say the least.
Oh.
He was known for being very strict,
Okay.
even harsh in his interpretation of Puritan beliefs.
And he believed in witches.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He believed in a very literal interpretation of the Bible,
Okay.
especially when it came to witches and the devil.
It seems like he really amplified the existing anxieties in Salem Village.
Well, just imagine hearing sermons every week about the threat of the devil, the
Yeah.
reality of witchcraft,
Yeah.
and eternal damnation.
Yikes.
It was a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
So he kept this fear of the devil right at the front of everyone's minds.
And he wasn't exactly a comforting presence either, right?
No, he would publicly shame people
Really?
for really minor things.
Oh, wow.
So people were afraid to speak out against him.
They're probably afraid to do anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you've got this community with all these problems, and then you add a minister who's constantly telling them that the devil is out to get them.
And then in January of 1692,
Oh, boy.
Reverend Parris's own daughter,
Okay.
Betty, who was 9,
9 years old.
and his niece, Abigail, who was 11,
Okay.
started acting very strangely.
What do you mean by strangely?
Well, they were contorting their bodies,
Okay.
screaming uncontrollably,
Oh, wow.
hiding under furniture,
Okay.
barking like dogs.
That's
Yeah.
a little freaky.
It was definitely unsettling.
So I imagine people were quick to blame witchcraft.
And they did. They called in a doctor,
Oh, okay.
and he diagnosed them with bewitchment.
Wow.
So,
Based on what, though?
well, he was influenced by the prevailing beliefs of the time
Right.
and popular texts about witchcraft,
Like what?
like Cotton Mather's Memorable Providences.
Okay, so this diagnosis must have freaked everyone out.
It totally validated their fears.
Yeah.
They already believed that the devil was out to get them.
Right.
And now they had proof.
In their minds, anyway.
Right.
So now the big question was, who's the witch?
Exactly. And under intense pressure,
Okay.
Reverend Parris's enslaved servant Tituba was accused. And she confessed.
But she was probably coerced.
Most likely.
So even if it wasn't a true confession,
Yeah.
it must have seemed like proof.
Oh, yeah. It was everyone's worst fears were confirmed.
Right.
It legitimized the witch hunt,
Yeah.
and it really fueled the hysteria.
So this was just the beginning.
Unfortunately, yes. This is just the start of the Salem Witch Trials.
And things are going to get a lot worse.
A lot worse.
Okay, so we've got all this fear and tension and religious extremism brewing in Salem Village.
Right.
But how did this actually turn into trials?
Well, as more and more people started getting accused,
Yeah.
the authorities decided to set up the special court.
Oh, wow. So a court just for witchcraft cases?
Yeah, they called it the Court of Oyer and Terminer.
Okay.
Sounds fancy, but
I-
it was pretty messed up.
In what way?
Well, a lot of the judges were personally connected to the accusers.
So not exactly impartial.
No, not at all.
Uh.
It's a total conflict of interest.
So basically, if you were accused, You were kind of doomed from the start.
Pretty much. And the rules of evidence back then
Yeah.
were a lot different than what we have today.
Like how?
Well, they relied a lot on something called spectral evidence.
Spectral evidence.
Yeah, basically people would testify about dreams and visions.
Wait, so you could be convicted based on someone's dream?
Yeah, it sounds crazy now.
It really does.
But back then they took it seriously.
I guess if you really believe in witches,
Right.
it makes a little more sense.
But even Cotton Mather,
The guy who wrote that book.
yeah, even he started to question the use of spectral evidence.
Really?
Yeah, he thought it was unreliable.
But, I mean, imagine, like, just accusing someone based on a dream.
I know, it's wild.
Yeah.
It shows you how powerful fear can be.
Right. Like, it can literally warp your sense of reality.
Exactly. And on top of that, there was immense pressure to confess,
Even if you were innocent.
especially if you were innocent,
Right.
because confessing was pretty much the only way to avoid being executed.
So you're basically forced to choose between lying and dying.
Yeah, it was a horrible situation.
And a lot of people did confess.
Even if they didn't do anything.
Right, because they were afraid of being tortured or killed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sadly, a lot of innocent people were executed.
Based on, like, false confessions and dreams.
And flimsy evidence.
It's crazy how easily justice can be corrupted.
Yeah, especially when fear and desperation take over.
So was anyone actually executed?
Oh, yeah. The first person to be executed was Bridget Bishop.
Okay.
And the evidence against her was super weak.
Like, what kind of evidence?
Well, a lot of it was spectral evidence.
Of course.
And just like rumors and hearsay.
And they killed her based on that.
Yeah, it was a complete miscarriage of justice.
And it seems like a lot of the people who were accused were already, like, outsiders.
That's right. They targeted a lot of women,
Right.
but also men who were poor
Okay.
or outspoken.
So anyone who was different or challenged authority.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Giles Corey.
That name sounds familiar.
He was an 81-year-old man who refused to enter a plea.
Why?
He knew the court was corrupt,
Okay.
and he didn't want to participate in it.
So what happened to him?
They pressed him to death.
Pressed him to death. What does that even mean?
They basically piled rocks on top of him
Oh my God.
until he died.
That's horrific.
They did it over several days.
That's just barbaric.
It really was. It shows you how determined they were to control people.
So even though there was all this fear and hysteria,
Yeah.
there were also people who were trying to, like, fight back.
Definitely. Like Giles Corey.
Right.
He resisted the court's authority even though it cost him his life.
So maybe there was some hope even in the midst of all this darkness.
Yeah, I think so. As the trials went on, people started to have doubts,
Okay.
especially when the accusations started reaching higher social classes.
What do you mean?
Well, even the governor's wife was accused.
Oh, wow. So it was like getting a little too close to home for some people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people like Increase Mather started speaking out against the trials.
Who increased Mather?
He was a prominent minister,
Okay.
and Cotton Mather's father,
Oh, right.
he thought the trials had gone too far.
So maybe people were starting to realize that things had gotten out of control.
Yeah, I think the sheer number of accusations started to make people suspicious.
Like, it couldn't all be true.
Right.
So what happened? Did the trials just stop?
Well, eventually the governor intervened.
What did he do?
He disbanded the special court
Okay.
and pardoned everyone who was still in prison.
But I imagine a lot of damage had already been done.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Lives were lost, families were destroyed.
And the whole community was traumatized.
Yeah, and many of the accusers later recanted their testimonies.
So they admitted they were lying.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tragic reminder of how easily fear can spiral out of control.
And how important it is to question what we believe.
Exactly.
So we've talked about, like, the history and the trials themselves, but we still haven't really answered the question of, like, why?
Right, like what actually caused this mass hysteria.
Yeah. Was it just religious extremism, or was there something else going on?
It's one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the Salem Witch Trials.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer.
Right.
It's probably a combination of things.
Okay, so one theory I kept seeing was this thing called ergot poisoning.
Oh, yeah?
So basically, it's this fungus that grows on rye,
Uh-huh.
and if you eat bread made with contaminated rye,
Right.
you can start hallucinating.
I have all sorts of other weird symptoms.
So some people think that maybe that's what was happening in Salem.
It's possible.
Yeah.
The symptoms of ergot poisoning can be pretty scary.
Yeah, like convulsions and hallucination.
Yeah, and, a feeling of being bitten or pricked.
And if you already believe in witches,
Right.
that's going to seem like pretty convincing evidence.
Exactly.
But ergot poisoning doesn't really explain why certain people were targeted.
Yeah, that's the problem with that theory.
Right, like why would the fungus only affect certain people?
And why would it specifically target those who were already outsiders or threats to the community?
Exactly.
So while ergot poisoning might have played a role, I don't think it's the whole story.
So what else could it have been?
Well, another theory is mass psychogenic illness.
What's that?
It's also known as mass hysteria.
Oh, okay.
It's basically when a group of people start experiencing the same symptoms even though there's no physical cause.
So it's like a psychological thing.
Yeah. It often happens in times of stress or anxiety.
Which makes sense for Salem.
Right. They were dealing with all sorts of hardships.
Yeah.
Plus, they were constantly being told that the devil was out to get them.
So it's like this perfect storm for mass hysteria.
Exactly.
But we also have to remember that there were some people who were deliberately using the trials for their own gain.
Oh, yeah. Like Ann Putnam Jr.
Right. She accused people who were enemies of her family.
So it wasn't always about fear or hysteria.
Right. It was also about power and revenge.
Exactly.
So the Salem Witch Trials were really this complex mix of fear, social dynamics, and just plain human nastiness.
And sadly, it's something that we still see today.
What do you mean?
Well, we might not be accusing people of witchcraft anymore,
Right.
but we still have this tendency to scapegoat and demonize those who are different.
Oh, yeah. Like in politics or online.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in fear and anger.
And to blame others for our problems.
Right. And that can lead to some really dangerous outcomes.
So what can we learn from the Salem Witch Trials?
I think the biggest lesson is the importance of critical thinking.
Like not just believing everything we hear.
Yeah. We need to question our assumptions.
Okay.
And be wary of those who try to exploit our fears.
And we need to remember that people who are different from us aren't necessarily our enemies.
Exactly. We need to be more understanding and compassionate.
And we need to have the courage to stand up for what's right.
Just like Giles Corey.
Right.
He knew the court was corrupt.
Yeah.
And he refused to participate in it.
Even though it cost him his life.
He's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to speak out against injustice.
So even though the Salem Witch Trials happened over 300 years ago, they still have a lot to teach us about ourselves.
Absolutely. They're a reminder that we need to be careful and always question what we believe.
That's a great point to end on, I think.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Salem Witch Trials.
It's been fun.
It has. We'll see you next time.